Vox and Hops heads. I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians, talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. Hope you had a killer week. I most certainly did. Now, today on the podcast, I'm very stoked to be back with my beer media friends, and we're talking about the top 10 Quebec breweries from 2024. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops episode number 482 with Nathan Lefebvre, also known as Nathan Does Beer, Noah Forrest from Beerism.ca, and Craig Thorn of the BAOS Podcast.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's that time of the year. That's right. We are going through the top 10 Quebec breweries from 2024. Today, I am very stoked to be joined by Nathan Lefebvre from Nate Does Beer, Craig Thorn from the BAOS Podcast, and Noah Forrest from Beerism.ca. We are going to be counting down our top 10 breweries leading up to the number one spot, and I'm goddamn stoked to be back doing this for the 6th year in a row. That's right, me and Craig have been doing this for 6 years now, and let's kick this off, starting at the top and working our way down to the number one position. At number 10, we have Boreal. That's right, and let's hear what Noah had to say about that.
Boreal is probably, arguably, one of the most interesting and important, not only important breweries in Quebec as a whole, if you look at the craft, but like important in the haze scene for the last, let's say 6 years, 7 years, I don't know, where they redefined the ability to create an IPA that was scalable and available to be at stores. And it took a few years to get there, but it was definitely one of the first. And
Nord-Est is up there with like Tamio, I think, with the first in the province for sure.
And that's why I pulled out my Nord-Est glass because
OG.
Like my history with this beer is that Gabriel, who is the head brewer, I think still the head brewer at Boreal, reached out to me 6 or 7 years ago, and I was flabbergasted because he told me he was like a fan of my blog and all that, which just seemed absurd to me at the time because it like, I don't know, just given the gravitas and the amount that this brewery brews, I never thought of the guy like being not only into craft beer, but craft beer niche enough that he would be following the weirdo Anglophone blog guy. And he was starting this new program called episodes. So like they were naming it, and it was essentially a gift from his owners to basically give him this little tiny side brewery where he could play and experiment. And at first he did a couple of like interesting things, but nothing monumental in terms of hype. And then he's like, fuck it, I'm going to make a New England. And he did. And it was just in growlers at first, so no one drank it. But then slowly over time, people were actually managing to taste it. And then it grew into this little bit of an underground social media phenomenon where they, like, in so many words, like, convinced him to can it or convinced them. So then they had like a bottle release. And I remember everyone going and just being like, why are we lining up at Boreal? This just seems so absurd. Like, Boreal, it's shit beer and blah, blah, blah. And so people were like leaving with cases of Nord-Est and these little like 355 cans that had like a wraparound label. And then almost overnight, like it became, at least for a period of time, I don't remember how long, it could have been 2 months, it could have been 6 months, a year, I don't know. But like that was the best New England IPA that you could get in a can in the province. That changed, obviously, as things happened, like Sorum and all the other places and blah, blah, blah. But at the time, that was pretty monumental. And for it to be done by the one brewery that you think of as shit or just like the thing that's always been there, that's been fine but cheap and off, it was so incredible. And then last year, I feel like they've really dialed in what they're doing. And so they have, you know, a release or two a month, and then I can get them at IGA. They're very reasonable. And then not to mention that, like, drinking something like this, which honestly, This is IPA de Côte, and for your money, it's the best West Coast that you can get at a grocery store. And honestly, I'm kind of including most of the craft beers that they'll have at the grocery store too. Like honestly, like especially like money to value. But even then, even without that, I think it's probably one of the better. Because like Gab knows it and he knows how to scale it, and like it's a good fucking beer, and I drink this beer all the time. Anyway, I've been ranting for too long. This is going to take 6 hours, so I'll let you guys go.
Hell yes, mad cheers to Boreal for being in the top 10. At number 9, we have a newcomer brewery, a brand new brewery. That's right, we're talking about Bad Bones Brewing, and here's what Craig from the BAOS Podcast had to say about them.
These guys are fucking so fire to me. Bad Bones, if people don't know, they have a fascinating story and a fascinating setup. The quick version, I would definitely recommend you go watch our pod. Nate and I did a pod with Zach and Dave like a month ago. And the quick version is that they essentially... Oh, let's use this class. Zach used to work at Brewski, and he had a YouTube channel called Porno, P-O-U-R-N-O. And they just did these really cool, like almost like travel Bourdain style videos. And they'd go to like Treehouse and Alchemist and all this shit. So they would go and like, I told him I was actually mad at them back in the day because we were like, they would just do these occasional YouTube videos, and we've been a regular podcast for 10 years in April. And they got interviews with John from Alchemist. And I was like, fuck, man, they've been ignoring my emails for like a year. You motherfuckers go and get it. I was pissed. But they did a beautiful job, like really nice videography. Everything was really cool. So the quick version, the reason they called Bad Bones is Zach was going to Brewski one morning, and he lives in Dunham. So he was driving up from Dunham, and basically he hit black ice on the road, and his car went in front of an 18-wheeler truck, and basically he nearly died. It was insane. And managed to obviously get through it and fucked up his whole body. So his whole, obviously bad bones. His bones are pretty bad. Right. And they're really like, they kind of remind me of me and my brother a bit. They're little smart asses. It's awesome. They said their mom hates it when they name all the beers. Like this is called Bedridden. They've got ones named after all the different bones that he broke: clavicle, tibia, pelvis, black ice. They got one for the coma. We had
like near death experience.
Yeah, but basically these guys were into, like, obviously worked at Brewski, into all the hype haze. So what they've just, this is like milky. This is 9.2%, basically a triple IPA, which is the first beer. Of course, it is for me, and it's drinking just great because it's higher ABV, and they've got the that hop burn there that keeps it alive. So personally, this is great. This is kind of like how I like IPAs. They definitely position themselves as like an IPA factory as such, kind of like Badlands, where basically that's all they've done. They did have plans to do other things, but right now they can't even keep the beers on the shelves. They've got very select retailers. All the retailers are essentially one can per person of each SKU. They can't keep up. They actually have the most fascinating deal with Dunham. So they rent space inside Dunham's brewery, brought in their own equipment, and then brew through there. They use Dunham's canning line, and they have one tap line in their tap room, and they sell all their cans from Dunham's fridges from there. It's not contracted. They're brewing it themselves exactly how they want on the equipment that they purchase. It's not rented or nothing. Like they bought it. And then they're able to do everything exactly how they want and then move on to the next stage. I see all the hype haze kids that I know in Quebec and outside there going and getting them every week, and I'm always jealous of, like,
hell yes, Bad Bones has been just crushing it so far, so young. Can't wait to see what they're going to do in 2025. In the 8th position, we have a classic brewery. That's right, I'm talking about Dieu du Ciel. Let's see what Noah had to say about them.
Dieu du Ciel is almost, like 80% of the reason I got into craft beer in the first place. Discovering Pêche Mortel, then like Aphrodisiac. My local dep when I first moved to Point Saint Charles with my mother, sorry, my kid's mother. One of the first like IPAs I ever tried was called the Diable, which was always classified as like an English meets an American IPA or some kind of hybrid. It never got good ratings on Untapped, or not Untapped didn't exist, unlike Beer Advocate at the time. But it was like this blast to my senses, and it's like not, anyway. long story short, they pivoted me into all the things that I became craft beer wise in the last year. And Pêche Immortelle is my favorite beer of all time. It is in Quebec. It's $4.50 a can for 500 mils. I mean, it's a 9.5% imperial stout that has a lot of coffee in it, which also has a lot of cost. And like that price is absurd. And like I'm not buying it to get drunk, but like that is my favorite beer. I mean, honestly, if I go to a store, I'm not looking for a craft Kolsch of some random brewery that opened up last week. Jid Seal fucking kills it, and it's cheaper. That's what I'm going to buy, and that kind of like ties into the Boreal thing a little bit too. Like, accessibility is huge, and the ability to scale up these beers at a price that's reasonable with the quality that they have compared to, like, no offense to a lot of the other breweries on the entire shelf of IGA, but honestly, when I look on those shelves, the only thing I'm buying at this point is kind of Jid Seal or Boreal.
Hell yes, Jid Seal Classic Brewery, and they are still crushing it after all these years. Mad cheers to Jid Seal and all their crew for keeping it going and keeping it interesting. In the 7th position, I'm going to kick this off. Get ready, everyone. I'm talking about Sir John Brewing. Heck yes, our friends from Lachute back on the list. Sir John, just another crushing year. I really feel like they dialed it in this year, just honing in the recipes, getting better haze. This is a West Coast, which is I'm excited to try. I feel like I haven't had it. It was Kevin's suggestion from La Canette. This is En Haut de l'Escalier. It's a West Coast IPA, 7%. Citra Mosaic and Citra Incognito hops. Max and Joel that run this place are goats. They're so goddamn cool. Their branding is impeccable. It's always just super interesting and visually captivating. If it wasn't a part of the competition for my Haze Wars this year, but their label was the goddamn coolest. They're just awesome, and they've really honed in the recipes, as I mentioned. I feel like everything is just much more on point than it has been any other year. They've been on the list a bunch of years in a row, but this year I definitely had them in my top 3, I want to say. Coming up in the 6th position, we have Cinquième Baron, and let's hear what Nate has to say about them.
Long-time faves of all of ours. What can we even say? Like, we know that the reason that they were Brewery of the Year 2 years in a row is one of the points that we discussed on, which is breadth of styles. And it is a thing that not a lot of breweries that have opened in the last 4 or 5 years do very much. And I would say very few do it to the same degree that Cinquième does.
Especially the New England thing, not to cut in, but like we're even putting the West Coast thing aside, because I think that's going to be a very important thing that you're going to talk about. But the fact that they do some of the best haze in Quebec while also doing everything else, it's just unbelievable. But please go on.
Not to mention the stats.
No, I agree 100%. Because that seems to be a tough sell for some breweries. Like when haze sells so well, like how can you devote tank space to to quality lagers, which need to spend so much longer in the tank, and all of these other things. But it's important to the whole team there, Jacob and Dimitri in particular, who are really all about lagers and kind of mixed firm and barrel aged stuff. That's what's important to them. But they really do run the full gamut. And as Noah was saying, what I've cracked open, Ten Falls, is one of their West Coast IPAs. This is the second time that they've made this one this year, and this was a new introduction to the lineup this year, and I fucking love it. And shout out to this again. So this was a new thing, I think, in the past year that they started doing. Maybe it was no, you know what? They've been doing this even longer than that. But in any case, they have added the hops that they put in, and not only just the names, but also the percentage of each hop here. So like this one, for instance, 50% cashmere, 30% centennial, 20% chinook, which is which is really cool. So yeah, they brew more West Coast IPAs, like more different West Coast IPAs than anyone I can think of.
Massive cheers to Cinq Embato, another crushing year. They actually won the top brewery 2 years in a row, and I'm excited to see what they're going to come up with in 2025. Let's keep this going. In the number 5 position, we have Nano Cinco. Let's hear what Craig had to say about them.
So these guys, man, these guys are killing it, eh? Nano have been a crazy consistent brewery. I feel like every time Nate went somewhere in Quebec, you at least got 2 cans each of this type of stuff. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And I feel like only like a couple of times I was like, this is not really one for me. But like 8 or 9 times out of 10, I'm like, oh, this is fucking killer. I feel like basically Nano Cinco, they're from Quebec City. Definitely one of the most of the hype. They do a whole bunch of stuff. They are primarily known for their haze. And that's what I've had mostly from them. Recently, Nate actually got me a bottle of a s'mores stout, which was cool. I feel like their stout game wasn't quite to the same level as their haze, but it was really nice to try something different. I think I've had some Crispies from them too that were really good.
You have, yep.
Yep.
There's been a couple of good ones that we've had. And I'll just jump in there if you don't
please.
mind. I feel like in line with what we were saying Sir John, I feel like they have also had a step up in the in this past year in their quality, particularly of their haze. That it's been because in previous years, similarly, there's been hits and misses. Like the hits have been really, really good. The ones that have missed have kind of been I feel like I'm rolling the dice a little bit. Mm-hmm. But this past year, it has really, really stepped up. It's been much more consistent across the board. Have just been pretty flames the whole way. The Crispies have been great. The haze has been really, really good. I also had a couple of those bottles, and like you were saying that still has some room for improvement, but I did enjoy them.
Yeah, definitely did not enjoy them. It was cool to try some different stuff because, when a brewery is kind of known, it's the same as Bad Bones, maybe. I'm excited to try anything but haze from them when they get to that point because I want to see where else, where their skill set at, because it's almost like they'd be starting from scratch. You dial in this haze to the point it's you've got it exactly where you want it, and then you're basically starting the same process again from stouts, from lagers, etc. It's a very consistent thing. But Nano have been I really think that the haze has just been fantastic.
Nano Cinco are simply sick, and I cannot wait to keep seeing what they're going to do. Their beers are just crushing. Their tap room is super cool. Let's keep this rolling. In the number 4 position, we have Le Catch, and let's hear what Nate had to say about them.
So, yes, from Saint Flavie, Quebec, we've got Microbreweries Le Catch. They made their debut on the top 10 last year, and they're back again because I'm gonna go ahead and say it again that I said last year is that they are making some of the best haze in the province. No exaggeration.
No.
And I think even Troy from Badlands would agree that I think that Guillaume from the Catch probably has the biggest freestyle hop contracts of anyone in the country. With the amount of peacherine that guy's able to use, I don't think anyone else uses as much peacherine as close. Guillaume.
I think we heard of peacherine because of Guillaume.
Yes, exactly. He's the one who turned us on to it.
Oh, did he ever?
And I think we maybe realized that other breweries had been using it on maybe one beer a year before that, but Guillaume is definitely putting out at least one beer every month or two with peacherine in it, which is so much more than anyone else, even more than.
It also sounds like a weird sexual position or something. Guillaume gave me all the peacherine.
That's it. We're in the top 3 position, people. Get ready. My Neighbors, top 3rd brewery in Quebec from 2024 is My Neighbors, Melon, and let's hear what Craig had to say about them.
Melon have really been, they really found their own, I think, over the last little bit. They did this one I'm drinking is called Fluffy Wonderland. I had this on tap there last on fucking Luca actually last summer, and it was phenomenal. Their Crispies are definitely where it's at. I feel like they do a lot of styles really, really well, but their Crispies, I didn't pour this super well. I feel like Melon have really they did this cool trip, which I enjoyed following on Instagram to Czech Republic and I believe Germany as well. And they really got to they came back and they would seem very inspired by the region. And they just basically started like slaying the Crispies in a way that, was pretty intense. Like my brother got some somehow and gave them to me. I don't know how the fuck he got them. And I hadn't had them since they did that trip. They had these little series that looked like really old school cans and shit. And I was just like, fuck me, this is insane. Because when when they came out, they would do it. And this is a Hellas Lager, by the way. They really leaned into the crispy side. They obviously had been doing a lot of they'd been doing haze, they've been doing saisons, they were doing like big stouts. I think they had 2 fooders before they even opened. So they were really leaning into that kind of world.
Hell yes, my neighbors are just simply crushing it. I cannot wait to crawl on over there and then maybe crawl home for another few pints really, really soon. And I'm excited for 2025. Now, drum roll, people, we're hitting the number 2 spot, and it's my friends from Brewski in the old port of Montreal. Let's hear what I had to say about that. Brewski really stepped up this year. They really stepped up this year. I feel like their haze out of this world this year. I don't know what changed or what happened. Maybe nothing changed. Maybe I changed. But just in love with their haze this year. Their distribution really stepped up because they opened the annex. I feel like it's a big thing for me this year is like being able to walk into a store and just grab a beer. Them opening the annex, which opened way more fermenter space. They can distribute beers across the province a lot more easily. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's freaking amazing. And the annex is beautiful and it's phenomenal. You mentioned Derek. He's a scientist. He's a genius. Derek is the GOAT. He's so fucking smart. They have to make a bunch of styles because they're in the old port and people just walking by sit down and see it's a pub. So they come in and they just sit down and they have a brew. So they have to make a bunch of different styles, but Derek will not let them just make a bunch of shitty styles of beer. They're all amazing. You can have a little lager, you can have a white, you can have a red ale. They do it all. They don't fuck around. Their barrel aging also really stepped up because of the annex. There's more space for the barrels to be coming out. I haven't drank a bunch of them, but I know that it's a possibility, and I know that's probably what he's doing. I love Brewski. My one thing their art is interesting. I'm a musician. It's all AI. It irks me, but it's definitely them. If it's not AI, I'm wrong and I apologize. But I like real things. That's my only thing, but it's definitely them. And it works, but it's my only thing that I can say negative against them. And now, drum roll, everyone. Here we are. The top brewery from Quebec in 2024 is the same brewery that won the award last year, Masorum Brassatorium. They're just simply crushing it, and this is what I have to say about them. They're impeccable. They make all the styles. That was important for me. I was arguing about that I wanted a brewery to win that could do more than one style of beer. That was important for me. Their brand is freaking impeccable. Marc-André is a fucking genius. His artistic integrity is unparalleled. It's cool. You go there, it's a cool. Even my friends that don't like beer want to go to Masorum with me, and I'm like, okay, cool. Shout out to my friends from Chambly. The beers are just crushing. Like whether it's like a Pilsner, I'm drinking a Pilsner myself. Italian Pilsner, I want to say. Il était une fois. Arrivederci. Italian Pilsner, their haze is amazing. Their stouts are amazing. They're amazing. They're so goddamn cool. And plus, there are a bunch of metalheads that run it and metal musicians. I love them to death. They are literally known around the globe. I tour the world, and when my session bassist Dom shows up at breweries with me, because I go to breweries every day when I'm on tour, with a Masorum hoodie on, they're like, oh, Masorum. They know. People know this about Masorum all across the globe. They're so fucking impressive. I'm so proud of my boys. 2 years in a row. I'm excited for next year. Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, this was an intense, epic hang. We went 3+ hours on this podcast. That's right. The full-length version of this conversation is available on the BAOS Podcast. It dropped today, so if you'd like to see everything in more depth, where everybody gets a chance to have their say about the top 10 Quebec breweries from 2024, you should definitely go and check that out. I put the link to that in the description of this podcast. Mad love to Nate, to Noah, to Craig. I love hanging out with you guys, and I love the Quebec beer scene. I'm very, very excited for 2025, and I'm damn stoked to talk about it next year when we do the top 10 then, too. Massive cheers to you all. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a killer rest of the week. I will be back next week with another episode on Thursday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.